Hello, this is Stephen Roselle. I'm going to give you a little update on my UV Unwrap tool. I did a post on this tool, I guess it was back in October maybe, and it was kind of a first pass at the tool. And I've since updated it, so it's still technically kind of in beta, but it's now actually in a kind of a later beta, I would say, before I'm going to officially put it into bonus tools. So one of the bugs I fixed is that you can actually launch the tool simply by sourcing it. There was a simple little bug with one of the procedures where you couldn't source it before. So if you just go to your script editor, say source script, and just find the script, double click, that'll automatically load the options for that. Or you can simply load it into your script editor and then just middle mouse drag that over into your shelf button and that will start it. So I'm going to start just by resetting all my options. First thing you'll notice, if you saw this tool before, is that I've updated it a bit. I decided to change some of the naming conventions and also just did a lot of bug fixing. So I'm going to kind of go over the general process of using this tool again. You can refer back to the original blog post if you want more information or more details. But let's just say we want to texture map this head. So I'm just going to start by using a, whoops, just by using a an unfold method here. Now, if I use a basic unfold, that will basically just unfold using kind of a best guess for how to unfold individual shells. I'm going to go straight to advanced unfold because with the case of a character, you generally want to control the direction of the initial projection for an unfold, and that's where this option comes in. Notice that this gets grayed out. If I click on that, it ungrays. And I just have to figure out which direction my character's facing. So he's facing Z. I just want to make sure I have facing Z checked on. Um, so for now, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and go into the tool. That will create a heads-up display. It'll also create, depending on the setting here, it'll create a test pattern, which will initially give you just a green texture. It also changes your selection color to red so that you can more clearly see your edge selections. And then it also will create a test pattern for analyzing your shell after the fact for testing the texture distribution. So now what I want to do is just figure out exactly how I'm going to break this guy up. So one thing I might want to do is say, for instance, just start off by splitting him right down the back of the head here. So I'll just add that as a border. And what that will do is it will create a texture seam along the back of the head. Now I haven't actually generated my UVs yet. All I've done is actually just predefine the border. So I could at this point just say continue and it'll ask me, okay, well, that's great, but you've said that you want advanced unfolding, so where do you want your symmetry anchors to be? Because that implies that you have symmetry in your character. So I'm going to choose the tip of the nose or any point along the center line and add that as an anchor. Now say continue. So that'll basically take the entire shell and it will unwrap it using a single cut down the back of the head. So if you'll look in here, and if I turn on my textures in my display here, you can see how that unwrapped, and it did a okay job, but not a great job. So I've got some problems. One is that I need to break this up into more pieces essentially because you'll see I'm really getting distortion down here where I have a small checker pattern and up here where I have a larger checker pattern, back here in particular. So I need to start to break this up into more pieces. So I always have a go back button before you actually commit to this layout, and at each step you can go back and kind of start over. So I'm going back to the edge definition process. So I've got an edge there along the back of the head. I'm thinking I probably want to split this neck piece out into a separate piece as well. So I'm just going to go through and begin to add all the borders for this neck. I'm just using Shift Select here. And again, whenever I add them, it highlights them not only in red, but also with a thicker display so I can clearly see where my borders are. So let's take this a step further and I can just go ahead and run it right now and just see what it does. Just say continue, add once again the tip of the nose for an anchor point, and just again kind of trial and error. So it does the unfold and now it's broken it into two pieces, but I've got other problems. For one, the neck needs to be laid out a little differently, and also kind of this area around the back of the head and where the ears are is really getting distorted. So I want to separate that out even further. So once again, I'll just go back, and this time I'll add another split along the side of the head. Again, the whole idea here is that I want to do as much trial and error as possible. So I'm going to grab some edges here, go in and continue to follow this path. Whoops. This gets a little tricky trying to select all these edges, but I'm going to go through and just kind of follow the hairline essentially. Whoops, that's too much. There we go. I'm just going to follow this hairline until I get down around here along the back of the head. So something like that. I want to keep the ear in with the rest of the texture for the face. So I'll add that as a border, and then I just want to go in and do the same thing over here. Nothing fancy, just need to go in and basically continue to make my selections, follow this loop, undo that. It's easy to select through the back of the character. I've intended to put a culling option in here, but you can control that yourself. You can set that independently. Okay, so there we go. So now I've split it into left side of the head, right side of the head, and front of the face, and then I've got the neck separated out as a separate shell. So now I'll just say continue. Once again, I choose my symmetry borders, and this time I'll just choose a different point, maybe the kind of unifying point there between the hairline and the face. So now I'll add that as an anchor, say continue. And sure enough, I get a much better layout, particularly for the face. So if you look at the face now, I get a much nicer distribution of my texture across the span of that face. The problems I'm having now are the other areas. So the neckline in particular is really kind of ugly. And then the side of the head is okay. So I'm going to show you how you can fix both of those problems. So with the neckline, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually recreate the UVs just for the neckline using a different method. So I'll just say done. And I'll go in here and I'll just grab that shell. So let's just grab this face here, right click, shift or control right click, and I'll say to UV shell. That will select that shell. Now what I'm going to do is turn on isolate select mode, and I'm going to try a couple of different methods. So let's try the uniform face method. So I'll enter the tool, and I'll just run through this whole process again, but this time only on the neck. So I'm going to create a split here on the back. I'll add a border. And I'll just try it with uniform face method, see what it does. So what uniform face method will do is it will try to uniformly distribute your UVs in your texture space, which kind of worked. In some cases, it'll actually give you a good result. This may be good enough. I may be able to actually massage it manually from here, but I might want to try one more method, which is the proportional face method. So I'll go back, and this time I'll set this to proportional face, and once again, just continue. It'll take a little bit longer. This is a unique method. It basically gives you a projection per face from the normal of the face, and then it stitches them all together. So in certain situations, it's a really unique way of laying out your UVs in situations where the unfold doesn't quite work and where the uniform doesn't quite work. And so now I get a pretty even distribution. If you'll look at my checker here, pretty even distribution of my checkers into my space here. Now, what I might also want to do is go in and run a uniform or maybe a layout here and actually just lay these out one more time into my UV space. Whoops, let's say done. And I'll just reapply the layout there. And actually, when you do this, you have to, one little glitch that I need to fix is you got to go in and refresh your texture swatch there because it's baking a texture. Essentially relative to our object. So now if you look at this, I've got a pretty even distribution. Like the actual distribution of my pixels across my character look pretty good. One thing I want to fix though is that just the default unfold on the sides of the head just didn't quite cut it. So this is where you can go in and you can use the interactive unfold to actually refine this a little bit further. So what I'm going to do is just use my select shell tool, grab the shell, turn on my interactive unfold, and then just use that to continue to unfold it. So we can kind of go back and forth between our relax and our unfold and do the same thing over here. I'll just grab that shell, go into my unfold, and I'll just do a bit of a relax, just a slight relax and then another unfold. And before too long, I can actually start to get a much nicer unfold. So you can use the interactive unfold kind of in addition to the this automated unwrap tool. So let's just go in and refresh my texture once again there and go in and look at it in my 3D view. And once again, I have a pretty nice even distribution. And I might want to fine tune it with a little manual massaging of the UVs, but it's not a bad start in a pretty quick in a pretty short amount of time. So what I also want to do is try this on a really complex object. So what I have here is a tree, and this tree is frankly kind of a nightmare to texture map. So if I had to put textures on this or paint textures on this, creating the UVs would be extremely difficult if I had to do it by hand. So again, using this tool, I can kind of automate the whole process. So what I would first do initially maybe is go ahead and go in and grab like one of these roots here. And let's just say I'll grab these faces here and let's actually just keep selecting all the way up till about there. I'll go into this tool, let's bring it back over here, And I basically try a uniform just as a test initially. I'm going to turn off isolate select for now. And I'll just try uniform as a test just to show you the different results. So I'll just say enter and go in and add my borders if I want to add more borders, or just say continue, and it'll unfold that in a really nice kind of even uniform manner. So you can see here my faces in 2D are uniform, but because of that my texture is going to stretch because my faces aren't uniform in 3D. So that's where we have these other options where I have proportional face method and a basic unfold. This is actually a case where basic unfold will probably give me a pretty good result. So I'm going to switch to basic unfold, which just tries to unfold it using kind of a best guess algorithm. So I play this back, or rather hit back, make sure I still have it selected, add more borders if I need to, say continue, and sure enough, now when I do an unfold, I get something in 2D that looks a lot more like what I have in 3D. So I'm going to apply that basic unfold across my entire mesh all at one time. In order to do that, let's just say done there. In order to do that, what I would have to do is just grab my mesh and enter the tool with that mesh selected. It'll basically allow me to texture map the entire thing. But the trick is I have to be able to go in here and begin to specify where I want my borders. So for instance, I'd want a border there. I'd go in, I'd probably want a border here. Probably go in and add a border for each one of these roots. I might want to go in and separate out this piece, say for instance like adding a border there, and then maybe come in here and cutting out a piece here and maybe in through here, and kind of defining a way to unfold and unwrap that. So basically I'm going to pull this out in 2D and flatten it out and unwrap it essentially. So then I would continue and separate out maybe the trunk up here and so on, and do something like that. So what I can do is actually continue this with each branch. Obviously, you don't want to sit here and have me do that the whole time. So what I'm going to do is actually use a quick select set that I've already created. So this quick select set, this took me, I would say, about 5 to 10 minutes. I'll even say 10 minutes just to be conservative. To go in and define all these texture borders. So in about 10 minutes, I went through to find all these texture borders. Just simply say add border, set this to a basic unfold. I'm going to do what's called a proportional fit, which will proportionally scale each shell from a tree into my texture space. And then I just simply say continue. Before I do this, I'm actually going to scroll up the help line so you can see the progress bar down here. So now I just say continue. Look down here at the bottom and you'll see unfolding, and it tells you how many shells it's working on and how many shells it's actually processed. So because I'm dealing with several thousand polys and 31 shells, it's going to take a little while to get through the process, but it's certainly better than having to go in and do it manually or individually for each particular branch, which is a nightmare. So a couple more shells here, and it should be done. There's 29, 30, and this is the last shell. And it lays it out into my texture space, and voila, we have our textures broken out pretty nicely. So now I could go in and I could refine this even further. I might want to actually go in and, redo a couple of the shells. So similar to the head example I showed before, I could go in and just grab any individual shell and I could just rerun it using a different method. But this gives me, gets me 90% of the way there in a very short period of time. So I'm going to post the current version of this script, which again is beta 3. I'm going to post it on my blog, but keep an eye out for this in the next release of bonus tools, which should be sometime soon. I don't know exactly when, but hopefully it'll be in there. Thanks.